Hi, I'm Anna. I'm from Australia, and I'm starting a company. I wanted to learn from the best, so I flew to the USA to meet with successful entrepreneurs and learn from their stories.
We don't sleep when the sun goes down. We don't waste no precious time. All my friends in the loop, making up for teenage crime.
I really want it just to be a showcase about you and your journey.
Sure.
So just really cash. Yeah.
So Andy and I, my co-founder, we started this back in college, and we knew we wanted to start something together. At the time, it was just doing homework and late night working on programming projects. It surprised us just like how tricky tax law could be, how complicated accounting could be, how difficult it is to hire great people, how to motivate people. At the time, we hired a few former classmates of ours who were friends, and that kind of made things awkward because like when times are tough, like it really puts the friendships to the test. But the business didn't really work out. Like we spent 2 years on it. It wasn't getting the traction we wanted. So we had to like tell everyone, you have to find a job. We can't continue to afford you. So the first 2 years were like really challenging. We learned how to run a business. We learned how to not run a business, more importantly. And then we recovered from that and we're on our way from there.
How long was it in between you did that till you moved on to the next project?
Maybe like 4 or 5 months, something like that, before we started thinking about the new inDinero, the full service inDinero. And it's kind of crazy because that gap period, you would expect that to be the most stressful, painful period. However, I think those were the happiest moments.
Really? Why is that?
It was just very freeing to know that I didn't really have responsibility. Like I didn't have any employees relying on me. I didn't have customers relying on me really. So I felt at peace with myself, which is kind of interesting.
That's an amazing life lesson.
Yeah, it is that like having progress and success doesn't necessarily correlate with happiness.
Wow. And what was the biggest thing you learnt from that like early on failure?
I learned to really focus on the business fundamentals, not to get carried away by just PR and getting like news clippings and having people pat me on the back and say, you're doing a great job, when really the solid business that we thought we had did not exist. Like we didn't pay attention to how much revenue we were bringing in, what our support costs were, like none of that stuff we paid attention to. We were still kind of struggling to figure out what we wanted to do. We wanted to stay in like the finance space, and we knew we didn't want to like give up and like take real jobs at like Google or Facebook. We didn't even talk about it.
You didn't consider it?
It wasn't even on the table. Like most founders, they would say, all right, like if we can't figure out what to do by this date, we're shutting down and we're moving on. But for us, that never happened. We were just like really determined to keep on going forward. And then somehow like I was just like by myself one day thinking, all right, like how could we build a business where like we could justify charging hundreds of dollars per month for a customer? And so we kind of had that epiphany, and I visited a customer who said, you know, your product, it's okay, but you should make it so I could just press a button and you guys follow my taxes for me. So instead of paying you $200, I'll pay you thousands of dollars. I'm like, what? You pay us thousands of dollars? And so that kind of like hit me, and so we ran with that. I have some friends who really struggled with that. They say that they think there's some sexism and affects them. And so I wonder sometimes about when that actually happens. Like, has that happened? I'm sure it has, but I can't really figure out why. Like maybe I just said the wrong thing. Maybe my business fundamentals weren't good, so an investor didn't want to give me money, or maybe he was being sexist. I don't really know. And I don't think we'll ever fully know. So my perspective is I'm just going to focus on what's in my control. I'm going to go into every conversation being very confident, and I'll do the best I can and try not to worry about that too much. And I think like even in the workplace, like when we have, like I was reading Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, and that book really made me think about how people who are less confident, now we're not just talking about gender, it could be race, it could be age, it could be just someone who's less confident is less likely to go after job opportunities that they are qualified for. They're less likely to get the compensation they deserve. They're less likely to do projects that they should be on because they're less outspoken. And so I've really thought more about that overall theme and how could we reduce the likelihood of that happening. And I think it's a really serious question that really every employer should be thinking about.
And how do you do that in inDinero?
Every team, they meet every week, and it's not the manager who runs the meeting. We have someone else running the meeting, so it's not just the manager doing all the talking. And we're training them to like make sure everyone's voice is heard, no matter if they're sitting in the corner and they're the new employee. Like we're discriminating against the new employee because they're new, when really they just need to speak up more. In the traditional way of running a business, you might ask for a raise, and then the boss, if they like you, will give you a raise, which is kind of ridiculous if you ask me. So instead, how could we just set it like fair tiers where, all right, you're level 1 or you're level 2, and here's what you need to do to get to level 2, and it's purely objective. And then so there's less conversation required. It's less about convincing and negotiation skills and more about just like how well are you doing your job.
So you're really putting processes in place for equality.
That's what we're doing. It's not going to be 100%, but it'll definitely be better than traditional business.
What have been some of the other difficulties in the process of having a startup?
I'd say just like managing my own psychology has been kind of difficult. Like I haven't, like going through all of that, I didn't have too many friends who were going through something similar. Like they'd either succeed and I was jealous, or they'd failed and then they got out of the business. And then as the business started to grow, we didn't have any support network to help us figure out how do we go through our growing pains, because growing pains are still pains. So that's why we've joined like EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, and I joined YPO, Young Presidents Organization, and just like all these other groups for finding other people to lean on. That's one regret. I wish we had done that sooner. We just kind of waited too late and thought we could do it all ourselves, or we didn't want to be vulnerable and talk to other people about all of our problems. Like going to a network event, you say, hey, how's it going? And you're like, oh, it's great, I'm doing great. But really, like, you feel like horrible and everything's going wrong. So I think that's like something I wish I had learned earlier. So now I'm like pretty open about it. But what I learned from YPO and EO is that we don't just talk about business, we talk about our personal life and our family life. And it's just kind of interesting to me how our personal and family lives really impact how we perform in our business world. But we always just focus on the business and we say, all right, I'll just put my personal life on the side while I work in my business for a few years. But at a certain point, it just doesn't work out. We got to get back to the basics.
And tell us about funding.
So we've raised like $10 million to date. We raised like a $1 million seed round, and then we like burned through all of the money and almost ran out of business. And then we raised the next $9 million since then. The way we wanted to structure it was like we just really care about having great investors who are going to support what we do, who we feel like we could actually like share problems with and not worry about them distracting us from our business. But I mean, we also said we wanted investors who had been entrepreneurs, who'd run their own business before, because then they know the same challenges that we're facing and they could actually be helpful. They're not just financial investors, they're not just money.
So tell me about some of the milestones.
You know, it's funny about milestones that when you ask about that, I just can't think of any big milestones, because whenever we've set them, we meet those milestones and then we forget that we ever had them in the first place.
Very entrepreneurial of you, like just on to the next thing.
On to the next,
Yeah.
and then we forget to celebrate it, and then we think, wow, I haven't achieved anything 10 milestones later. Like one of my big first milestones was, all right, like let's just get to ramen profitability so that we're not reliant on investors anymore. But we blow through that and it's like, okay, like next goal, like now you need to get $1 million in revenue, and then we just blow past that and it's just all forgotten. I've always looked for big milestones when really I should have just focused on the small ones along the way and celebrated each of those in a more serious way. I have a blog. I used to update it a lot and I got a lot of page views on it.
How many page views did you get?
I was getting like, I don't know, 80,000 uniques a day.
What was it about?
Just entrepreneurship and business. But I kind of pulled it all down because I feel like I've learned so much over the years that anything I wrote down was just, I guess my opinions changed. And I find that happens a lot.
And do you journal every day?
Yeah, every day.
Is it a good outlet for you?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I even rank my happiness score.
Every day?
Yeah.
Out of 10?
It's -3 to +3, because you can't have, because what if you're unhappy, right? That's not like 2 out of 10. It's negative. You have negative happiness on a bad day.
And is that a way for you to kind of maintain and look over your mental health while you're working?
Yeah, so actually I could score my happiness. I could be like, okay, this month was, I scored a 50, and this month I scored a 15. So I could actually chart out, I could actually give you like my happiness score. And then I could be like, okay, wow, it's interesting how April wasn't quite as good as May, but that was better than June, or...
And can you track that with like different events in the business? Like, does that affect your happiness level?
It does, but yet it also doesn't. I mean, remember when my business wasn't really working out, I was at the happiest point. But I still do kind of miss the times though when we weren't doing so well, because yeah, I was able to relax, go and work late, leave work early. It was fun.
You had a bit more freedom?
Yeah, complete freedom. It was like very, very freeing. But I like what I do now too. I'd rather have this than that.
Yeah, of course.
I don't want to go back.
Still goods in the bad.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least if we'd be foolish not to find some good in that. Entrepreneurs like to think that they could just disappear and just like sit on the beach and like not have to work, but do that for more than a few days and then we'll go crazy.